Wild week 9. Of course, last week I said ugly dogs are dying. And I still believe that to be true, but it was just a weird week in the NFL where the favorites really struggled. 5-8 against the spread. You had some pretty significant upsets. Panthers over the Packers was the big boy. We'll get to that in a minute. And then the Vikings over the Lions. Quietly, Detroit's offense has kind of been trending down over the last few weeks. But you credit J.J. McCarthy in Minnesota. Nice job coming back from injury and looking damn good. A lot better than the Vikings looked under Carson Wentz the prior Thursday against the Chargers. So those upsets were probably, pretty suicidal for your survivor pools. But it was an interesting weekend in the NFL. I think when you start, let's just recap the games. Let's start with Thursday night. Nice job. Lamar Jackson came back and looked fresh. This Ravens team, I think, deserves to be the favorite in the AFC North. I know Pittsburgh had a nice win yesterday over Indy, but I still think Baltimore's got the inside track because they've got 2 games in hand against the Steelers, and I just think the Ravens are the better team. And I think they'll not win out, but maybe you're going to have to win out if they want to go over their win total, which was 10.5 pre-flop. They've already got 5 losses, so if they lose another game, the best they can go is 11-6. So I guess they have to only lose one more game down the stretch. But the Ravens are a very formidable team, guys. I think we have to ignore those first few weeks of data points without Lamar Jackson. And, the Bills game was nuts. Could have gone either way. They dropped that one, and then, of course, they lose the Lions game. And the Lions are a really good team, and they get blasted by the Chiefs. But since then, you kind of have to ignore that Texans game. You have to kind of ignore that Rams game, even though they battled in that Rams game with Tyler Huntley. I think you throw out the Bears game, too, frankly. I really think the Ravens season and how you grade Baltimore should start last Thursday. And you should use that as kind of your jumping off point with Baltimore. Like, for example, I've got Baltimore right now as still one of my best teams in my power ratings. I've got them in the top 5. I've got them 5 points better than an average team. I've got them a field goal behind the Chiefs. So I'm not penalizing the Ravens for that, slow start. I think they are one of the best teams in the league, and I think they'll be at the top of the AFC North standings after it's all said and done. They play the Vikings this week, then Browns, Jets, Bengals, Steelers, Bengals, Patriots, Packers, Steelers. I mean, again, they could easily not run the table, but finish. What are they now? They're 3-5 now, so they have 9 games left. They could easily go 7-2 and finish 10-7, and maybe that wins the division this year. Who knows? Maybe they need to get to 11 in order to unseat the Steelers, who had a really nice win yesterday. Speaking of Pittsburgh, that was the I don't want to say the most impressive result of the day because they were badly outgained in that game. And the Colts did a really good job continuing to put pressure on the Steelers' defense. The problem is they turn it over so damn much, right? Like, this is the great equalizer in the NFL. Pittsburgh only gained 3.7 yards per play. They were held to a 40% success rate on offense. But when you force 6 turnovers, it really doesn't matter what you do on offense. I believe the Steelers had gone multiple games in a row without a turnover, and they forced 6 of them against the Colts yesterday. I saw a note that Indy is now 2-2 against winning teams. So how good are the Colts, really? And it goes back to, they're grading out so well, and Daniel Jones is having this great year. I don't know if he's still first in EPA per play after yesterday, but he was first heading into the day. But in a close game against the Chiefs, against the Ravens, against the Bills, are you really trusting Daniel Jones and the Colts offense? I'm not. I would take all of those experienced quarterbacks over Jones and the Colts in a playoff game. I think what the Colts are doing right now is putting together an elite regular season. We've seen Tennessee do this in years past. We've seen other teams do this in years past. And then you get to the playoffs, and they fall flat on their face because they're just not ready for the big moments. But we'll see. Right now, the Colts still 7-2. They lead the AFC, but they have got a lot of work to do because I think a lot of people are going to be doubting them with their record against winning teams. Speaking of winning, the Bears, I don't know how they won that game yesterday. 47-42 over the Bengals. I saw a note, and this is just a crazy note. So the Bengals are 2-4 straight up under Zach Taylor in games where they score 35 or more points since the start of last year. So they've had 6 games in the last season plus where they have scored 35 or more points, and they've only won 2 of those 6 games. By the way, the rest of the NFL is 84-6 in that stretch. Insane. Cincinnati's defense is next level bad. I'm not running to praise the Bears for this win. The Bears seem to be putting together one of the most insane luck box seasons in recent memory. They won back-to-back games by the same score by a single point. Very fortunate in the Washington game, right? How bad did Washington look last night against Seattle? We'll get to that game in a little bit. But you barely get past the Commanders. You needed a late fumble on a fluke play to get past the Commanders. You beat the Raiders by a point. You get waxed by Tyler Huntley and the Ravens, and then you need just an insane comeback in the final minute. And you give up 40-plus to the Bengals. And Joe Flacco has got a bad arm. I mean, just I can't stress enough how fadeable the Chicago team is. The Bears were fortunate. They were +3 in the turnover margin. You gained 7.5 yards per player, +3 in the turnover margin, and you still need a late touchdown to win the game on a crazy play that really should have been tackled at midfield. And maybe they, get into field goal range anyway and win it, but I ain't high on this Bears team. I'm looking to fade them every possible angle. We mentioned the Vikings win over the Lions, one of the bigger upsets of the day. Nice win, but not a very sexy box score win. They were outgained. They got sacked. J.J. McCarthy got sacked 5 times. They were very clean on third downs, committed a few too many penalties for my liking. I'm not very high on this Minnesota team with J.J. McCarthy. I just think you caught Detroit in a bad spot, and the defense just was really giving Jared Goff problems. I mean, that was, again, 5 sacks on the other side, too, for the Lions. That was a defensive win. That was a Brian Flores gut one out, hold on late, and J.J. McCarthy did just enough. Only 1 turnover, just enough for the Vikings to get across the finish line. They won by a field goal on the road. Still a nice win. Not taking any. Listen, you win in the NFL. I don't care what the final is, what the fluke is. I'm still giving you credit for the win, but we have to now spin this forward, and you have to ask, are you upgrading? Are you downgrading teams? I'm not upgrading the Vikings based on yesterday. Not significantly, maybe a half a point. But in reality, I just thought their defense kind of willed them to that one, and it was not a dominant performance by any stretch. Biggest upset of the day, and this was, again, a very fluky, very coin flippy kind of game that just landed on tails for Green Bay. They outgained Carolina by a full net yard per play. They gained almost 6 yards per play, but they turned it over twice. They were 1 for 5 in the red zone. Jordan Love just kind of looked like he had his head in the clouds. And you credit Carolina, right? You give up the game-tying score. You actually, frankly, they should have been up 8 and missed the extra point. I think it was a penalty. Extra point got backed up. They missed the extra point. So they're only up 7. They give up the game-tying touchdown. And then Carolina drives it right down the field and gets into field goal range and kicks the game-winning field goal. So you give Bryce Young a lot of credit for that drive, but by no means was that a dominant performance by Carolina. I'm not in a hurry to upgrade Carolina based off of that. Maybe you downgrade Green Bay because you slept walk a little bit, and they should be a dominant team, but you're not beating these dominant teams. Their 2 losses this year to Carolina and Cleveland. And we'll get to them a little later in the show. Maybe they're a rise and wine candidate. But really tough to take them seriously when you're losing those games. And Carolina, very fluky team, very up and down team, very tough to get a read on Carolina from week to week. Chargers win, no cover at the Titans. Not much to get to here. It was kind of belt to ass. Frankly, the Titans were fortunate to cover. Plus 24% net success rate for the Chargers. The difference was the pick 6 on the first drive. Like, that was the reason that the Chargers were unable to cover that game. Just one bad throw for Justin Herbert. Not going to upgrade the Chargers because they lost Joe Alt in the game, and that's big. We'll keep an eye on his status throughout the week, but you saw what happened when the Chargers really struggled on the offensive line. They got pushed around by the Commanders a couple weeks ago. That's bad if Joe Alt has to miss serious time because they're really thin on the offensive line right now, and they're thin at the running back position. Justin Herbert took 6 sacks yesterday. They were fortunate, frankly, that they went 3 for 4 in the red zone and Tennessee went 0 for 2. Because with that pick 6 on the opening drive and losing your starting left tackle, your stud left tackle, they could have very easily lost that game yesterday. But Herbert pulled out a win, and the Chargers, at least for now, stay above reproach in terms of criticizing them for their game yesterday. But still some holes, and you hope that all gets healthy. Weird game in New England. I was on the Patriots. I had a terrible day in the contest. I got sucked out. I got Chargers. I was on the Chargers. That got sucked out. I was on New England, fourth down, and I think it was 4th and goal for Atlanta on the final drive. And Drake London makes a crazy catch in the back of the end zone, or in the front corner of the end zone, kind of leaning towards the sideline where his butt barely touched inbounds. Crazy game, and they missed the extra point. And they lose by 1. Atlanta outgained them, though. Success rate was kind of even. New England had 2 turnovers. That was the reason why Atlanta was able to hang in the game. Because I didn't think the Falcons played overly well. But their defense got after Drake May. That's the thing with Drake May, guys. Drake May's not going to win the MVP this year. He's not. I'm sorry. He's just not. He's taken way too many sacks. It is going to cost New England a game at some point. Didn't cost them yesterday. Hasn't cost them too much this year. But Drake May holding on to the ball. He had a fumble that was almost returned, I think, for a touchdown. Drake May's holding on to the ball way too long. He has not yet evolved as a quarterback to the point where he can have that internal clock. It is, I'm holding on to it. I want to make the play. I want to make the play. I want to make the play. Sack, fumble. We're seeing that way too much. I'm telling you, mark it down. It is going to cost New England a big game at some point in the second half. And the fact that it hasn't cost them a game in the first half of the year should be even more scary. Because usually, you can get away with it for a while. You can get away with it like you did yesterday, where you get sacked 6 times, you still win the game by a point. But eventually in the NFL, it's going to catch up with you. It is going to catch up with New England in a big moment. I'll take a guess. It's probably in the Buffalo game coming up in a few weeks. Let's actually see what the Patriots' schedule is like. I do think we have reached peak pricing on New England, right? They were a 3-point favorite on the look-ahead yesterday, and then they stretch out to 6, and I think the line closed 4.5. Like, to me, that's and they win by 1. Like, to me, that's kind of the indicator that we're a little bit too over the skis on this New England team. Like, they go to Tampa next week, they're a dog. I think a lot of people are going to want to bet New England next week as a dog, and I think the line next week is kind of telling you that Tampa's the right side. I'll probably be on Tampa in that game, but listen, if you're fading all of my contest picks and my NFL sides, I've been doing better in props and totals this year, but my sides in college football and the NFL, like, I can't pick a winner on a side to save my life right now. It's like everything. The Houston game yesterday, let's get to that one. I mean, dead nuts right side Houston. First half, C.J. Stroud moving it up and down. Denver barely keeping themselves in it with a couple of explosive plays, and then C.J. Stroud gets knocked out. And even despite that, the Texans still had a chance to win that game in the fourth quarter. But my luck lately has just been awful with sides. And getting C.J. Stroud knocked out in that game was a clear example. Denver barely outgained Houston. Houston had nothing offensively after Stroud got knocked out. You could just see the drop off from Stroud to Davis Mills, was significant. I was going back in the old time machine with Derek Carr and the Texans. 4 sacks. 0 for 3 in the red zone. 3 for 17 on third downs. I mean, just a dismal performance for Houston offensively after Stroud got knocked out of the game. But hey, you credit Denver going on the road, getting a good win against a tough defense, even though they were a -2 in the turnover margin, which was the widest margin of the day. Both the Patriots and the Broncos, -2 turnover margin, still won the NFL game. You just don't see that too often in the NFL. If you're a -2 in turnovers, you are typically losing in the NFL. Niners ho-hum over the Giants. Not much to get to there. Niners, frankly, outplayed them in most phases. Christian McCaffrey continues to be a stud. If you backed his props yesterday, you were feeling good. He was on my fantasy team. He's one of the reasons I won. San Francisco keeps stringing games together without Brock Purdy. I mean, you would imagine Brock Purdy at some point is going to come back and play pretty well because the rest of this offense keeps humming. So cheers to the Niners because I need them to get to 11 wins. That's one of my biggest win totals of the year. The Packers over 9.5 is the other one. I still think the Packers will get there, even though that was two terrible losses this year to Cleveland and Carolina, but I still think they'll get to 10. I think the Giants are kind of dead stick. I think they battled for a few weeks. They showed you their ceiling a few moments with Jackson Dart, but they have nothing. They have nothing offensively. Jackson Dart, again, holds on to it way too long. He's kind of the diet version of Drake May right now. He's just trying to make plays, and I respect and applaud his effort and enthusiasm, but there was a sack where he peeled out of the pocket, and he was like waiting, and the defensive lineman came from the backside, so Dart couldn't see him. And I'm shocked that Jackson held on to the ball, but he's going to get hurt at some point. Like we've already seen him go in the concussion protocol 10 and kind of dance around the raindrops through these injuries. But I think Jackson Dart, mark my words, it's not going to be pretty. But there's going to be a game this year where Jackson Dart just gets eviscerated and he gets knocked out of the game. Because I just think these young quarterbacks, I don't think they realize how much they have to protect themselves. It is a jungle out there, man. Like, you are dodging bullets every single play. We saw Jaden Daniels last night, too. We'll get to him in a minute. But I think these young quarterbacks just need to be very careful because the worst thing that you could do is put yourself in a situation where you just can't play because you're hurt. We mentioned the Colts losing to the Steelers. I think I'm downgrading Pittsburgh. I think I'm downgrading Indy, but I'm not upgrading Pittsburgh. I know that sounds weird, but I just think we got a little too stretched on the Colts, right? And I'm not overly high on the Steelers because, 6 turnovers in a game is incredibly fluky, and they still could only win by 1 score, and they only gained 3.5 yards per play. I'm not overly high on the Steelers. But I just think the Colts kind of showed you that there's a ceiling there. I think Indy is a good, not great team. I would not put Indy in the upper echelon of the NFL. I would not put them in the Chiefs, Bills, Ravens, Packers, Eagles, Seahawks, Rams. I would not put them in that tier. I would put them in the tier of they're going to make the playoffs. They're going to win a bad AFC South. Maybe not, actually, after what the Jags did yesterday. And then they're going to lose in probably the first round of the playoffs. Like, I do not see, unless they get this a crazy easy matchup and it's kind of a fluky game, but I don't see the Colts making it to the AFC Championship game. I don't see them winning 2 playoff games. I guess it's conceivable they could get the bye, and they would only need to win 1 playoff game to get to the championship. But if they do get the bye, they're going to be like Detroit last year, 1 and done in the playoffs. That's just the way I feel on Indy this year. I think they're going to put some really good regular season numbers out there. They feasted on some bad teams, but they're 2-2 against winning teams. I think we need to really temper our expectations with the Colts. Daniel Jones is having a really good year. Shane Steichen's probably going to win Coach of the Year. He deserves it. Shane Steichen deserves to win Coach of the Year. If the Colts, with Daniel Jones, win 11 games and win the South, he deserves to win Coach of the Year. But I don't see them winning a playoff game, and if they do, it'll be a wild card game, and they'll squeak by, and then they'll lose in the divisional round against the Ravens or the Bills or the Chiefs or one of those types of teams. The Jags, hey, listen, I thought there were multiple points in that game where they were going to fold up the tent. The Raiders were kind of punching them in the mouth. Good on the Raiders, honestly. 5.5 yards per play, 53% success rate on offense. We've been critical of that offense, but they showed you some really positive things yesterday. They were 3 for 4 in the red zone, 7 for 10 on third downs. But the problem was they couldn't get a stop in the final minute when they needed it. And the Jags just, right, like Raiders take that lead on the final drive, and then the Jags just let them go right down the field. Terrible beat on my under 44. That game was 9-6 entering the fourth quarter, and then 31 points in the fourth quarter. 23 all, goes to overtime. I lose the under. The Rams, belt to ass over the Saints. This was the widest success rate margin of the week, plus 26%. Not much to get to here. Tyler Shuck didn't really show much. Although, to be fair, 5.5 yards per play, not terrible. But 2 for 9 on third downs, 1 for 3 in the red zone, 2 turnovers. I mean, the Saints are, right, like we envision. I think I have the Saints right now as my worst team in the NFL with Tyler Shuck. I do. I have him as a -10. I have Tennessee, Cincinnati, and New Orleans as my 3 worst teams right now in the NFL. Cincinnati is going to be a really fun team, but they're not going to win a lot of games with that defense. Kansas City loses to Buffalo. I was on the Chiefs. Another one of my the setbacks yesterday. I cannot pick sides right now in the NFL to save my life. Totals and props are fine, but I cannot pick sides. You should be fading all my sides in the NFL. That being said, I didn't really think the Bills were overly dominant. They were the better football team, no doubt. But Patrick Mahomes played his worst game of the year. And the most inaccurate game of his entire career. How about this stat? First game in his NFL career, 142 starts, sub 50% completion rate. And they still only lost by a score and had a chance to tie on the final drive. I still think the Chiefs are the best team in the NFL, guys. I had the Bills 2 points behind the Chiefs coming into the game yesterday. I am 3 points behind the Chiefs. I had 3 points behind the Chiefs. I had Kansas City at a 9. I had Buffalo at a 6, which is why I thought the line made sense. Kansas City as a slight road favorite. I upgraded Buffalo a point because their defense played well, and that was a surprise. But I downgraded Kansas City by 1 point because I thought that their offense needed to play better in that spot. But I still have Kansas City a point ahead of Buffalo. So if the two teams played on a neutral tomorrow, if they played in Kansas City for an AFC Championship game, I might have the Chiefs favored by a full field goal. In Buffalo for an AFC Championship game or an AFC Divisional game, pick 'em. Maybe Buffalo a slight favorite, half a point favorite. But it would probably be a pick 'em because let's be honest, if the Chiefs are a dog, everyone's betting the Chiefs in that spot. They weren't a dog yesterday, though. They were a favorite. So I think that's why you had to maybe reconsider your wager because it is fair to say that these two teams right now are a coin flip, right? I have Kansas City a point better. That's really not much. And I think Kansas City still, if Mahomes plays even average. I mean, Mahomes was very rare to get a below average game from Mahomes. I think if Mahomes plays average yesterday, Chiefs probably win. But you credit Buffalo. Their defense threw him off kilter. They were 3 for 13 on third downs. They had one failed attempt in the red zone. That was the difference. Those two metrics and the turnover were the difference in the game. And Kansas City did not put their best stuff on offense. And I think if they played again, I think the Chiefs would watch that film on defense, and I think they'd make adjustments. And I think their offense will play better. I do. So I hope we get a return matchup. I hope it's in Buffalo, and I hope the Chiefs are a dog because I will be on the Chiefs once again. And finally, the game last night, belt to ass, almost 9 yards per play for Seattle. Sam Darnold looked great. We'll get to him a little later in the show, but Darnold looks fantastic. I think he is the poster child for why you do not give up on talented quarterbacks early on in their career. I think you have to let them develop, and you have to put the right coaches in their ear, or else they're never going to reach full potential. But Seattle's a legit team, guys. I have Seattle right now as my third best team in the NFC, tied with the Eagles. I have the Rams and the Lions just ahead of them, but Seattle's right there. If Seattle played LA at home, and we're going to get that game in a couple weeks, I'd make that game a pick 'em. I would honestly make that game a pick 'em. I'd make the Rams a favorite in LA. But I think, is that the game this week? No, I think they play Arizona this week. They play the Rams next week. Two huge games coming up for Seattle. You get the Cardinals at home, trying to avoid the letdown after the dominant performance. I think they'll be okay in that spot because the Cardinals play on Monday night, so short week for them. Then they're going on the road. And then you play the Rams next Sunday. It's an afternoon game, late game on Fox. Very excited for that game. That is going to be a very telling game. Seahawks at Rams. And then they play again in week 17 on a Thursday night in Seattle. That is going to be what decides the division, I believe. I think San Francisco is going to be right there, but I think the division is going to be decided between Seattle and LA. It's actually a good point. When does... My computer's being a little bit slow here, but I'm actually curious when they play. They've already played... The Seahawks have already played the Niners. My computer's being very slow here. Excuse me. Completely frozen. Well, we're going to have to look at that later because I can't get access to ESPN right now. Oh, here we go. Sorry, just had to restart there for a minute. See, that's the beauty of live TV. Let's look at the Niners schedule, actually. I think the Niners, they beat the Seahawks in week 1. And then they play them again the last week of the year. Yeah, that's gonna be. Actually, I was wrong. The Seahawks Rams game is not week 17. It's like week 15 on a Thursday night. Yeah, I think right now. So all three of those teams have 6 wins. The Niners have played one extra game. They're 6-3. The Rams and the Seahawks are 6-2. I'd have to look at the odds to see what I like there. I'll be honest. I might consider um, a bet on the Rams if they're a plus money dog right now in that division. I don't know. They might be odds on. They might be odds on. NFC West. Oh, the odds are not posted right now, unfortunately, on BetMGM. Let's see if they're posted on FanDuel. Divisions. What are the NFC West odds? Yeah, the Rams right now plus 125, Seahawks plus 160. Yeah, I would consider the Rams. Again, you get the home game next. So they play the Seahawks at home first. So if they win that game, it'll be odds on. The issue is the Rams have already lost to the Niners. That's the issue. And the Rams, that's the game this week. Oh, boy. Big game for the Rams this week. My guess is you'll see Purdy. Actually, I don't know. That turf toe is nothing to mess with. NFC West is a really good division, guys. It's a really good division. The game tonight, Arizona, Dallas, I don't have much. I think I'll be on the under most likely. I think that was what the number was telling me, but it doesn't, I don't really see a ton of value there. I would probably lay off the game and look at the prop market. Don't ask me to bet a side because I can't pick sides in the NFL to save my life.